Evolution of a Nobody, Chapter 7, 8, 9, and 10, The Ordinary Miracle. Chapter 7. Albert sat in class and tried to focus. There were about 30 other boys and girls, and the teacher, a young woman teaching English, was droning on. The desk at which he sat was a single solid unit, with the writing surface attached to the chair, and a steel undercarriage for holding books for class use. Hatred burned in his heart for the desk design. The reason was behind him. A bigger boy put his feet up on the metal undercarriage and kept tapping at it. "Do you mind?" Albert asked with a whisper. "No." The bigger one, a dark-haired young man with a shit-eating smile on his face, replied and tapped harder. Albert tried to ignore it. He was evidently successful, and the one at his back didn't care for that. For a moment the tapping on the underside of his desk stopped, and Albert had a sense of relief. The constant irritation had been maddening. Then the pain hit. A sharp pain in his leg. He looked down. The one behind him was leaning over. He had a thick rubber band, and he drew it back and let go, snapping it forward and holding on to the far end. The tip cracked against Albert's jeans right at the calf. "Hey, stop that," he whispered. The shit-eating grin was back. "Make me!" The crack came again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. The pain mounted and mounted. His mother's words echoed in his ears. Don't fight, just be good and tell a teacher if you're having problems." "Stop it," Albert said again. And again, and again. The shit-eating grin stayed in place on the face of the one behind him, and the smug little "make me" was whispered as a taunt. The pain kept growing until tears began to form in Albert's eyes, and his "stop it" came out as a plea. The rest of the class saw. On only one face he saw horror, but that one face was part of a student who did nothing. The teacher up at the front had paused her lecture and looked out at him, her mouth open like she knew she should do something, but one look at her, and Albert knew the truth. "I'm alone," he realized, and wept at his desk in the middle of class while the teacher resumed, and the pain continued to mount until the rubber band itself snapped and the bell rang to mark the end of the torment. "Albert!" The teacher called out as they all got up to leave. He picked up his books and approached, winding his way through the students. Most of them would not even look at him. Alone with the teacher for at least a minute, he stood in front of her. She was slender, young and in her early 20s, not much older than her actual students, with soft brown hair and a gentle oval face. He wanted to resent her. But he couldn't. Angry as he was, he didn't. He saw the reality of it. She's out of her depth, as afraid to act as I am. Does he bully you?" she asked. In his head, Albert wanted to scream, "What did you just see, you stupid bitch?" The absent resentment flared up like an inferno he could not let out. "No," he lied. "How ashamed do you want me to be?" "Why do I have to say it? If you won't do anything while you're watching it, why would you ask such a stupid question and believe I'd expect anything out of you if I say yes? You'll just make it worse." The rant he desired to scream at her remained locked in his skull. "Okay, then," she said, accepting his obvious lie and then looking away from him as fast as her head could turn. Unwilling to see him any more after she got the excuse to ignore what happened, Albert walked out, rushed to the restroom, and washed his red face. Lisa was waiting outside the bathroom when he emerged. Her arms crossed and one foot on the wall while the other was on the floor. Her head was turned toward the door of the boys' bathroom when he came out. "Hey, you okay, Albert?" He took one step. It was a limp. "Why do you ask, Lisa? If you're here, you already heard. Jason's not really a bad guy. He's just a little rough." Lisa defended him, stepping beside Albert and putting a hand on his arm. He shook it off, causing her long red hair to bounce a little behind her back. "Whatever helps you sleep at night, Lisa. I've got to go. Go see your friends." He half hissed it at her, and her green eyes blinked. "Albert, it's not like that. She said, but he put his back to her, moved to the side wall, and began to limp through the now mostly empty hall without her. "They're not that bad," she said after he left her alone and went on to her own room. At least things were calm for the next few classes, though it was hard to hide the limp. He kept his head down, avoided meeting anybody's eyes, and kept his arms tight into his body, clinging to the black strap of his backpack as an excuse and holding himself to the far wall of the hallways of the school to avoid bumping anyone by accident. That didn't stop the reverse from being done to him on purpose, even when it was mostly empty. His arms repeatedly smashed against the yellow brick of the building's walls. Nor did it stop the whispers, "Miss your daddy?" graced his ears time after time. But Albert said nothing back. His mother's admonition to be good, be nice, and not start fights always stayed his hand and stilled his tongue. When the bell rang for lunch, there was only one place he wanted to be, and he rushed out ahead of the rest of the math students to get there early. The library. The large double doors were glass and offered a clear view to the many rows of books on shelves that were twice his height. I need to grab some things for Raziel and Liala, he reminded himself, and quickly ran through the relevant sections. A book on basic electronics, computers, internet use for dummies, and a few books on nutrition, and for good measure a history book. For a solid hour, Albert lost himself in a book of his choosing. The world he loathed was gone, and the brighter fantasy was all there was. Even the pain in his leg and arms were gone. The cool stone against his back felt comforting. The little corner in the far end of the library where he was unseen, a bookshelf to his left, a wall to his right, and at his back where he could not be ambushed, it was all a great relief. For that brief time Albert could smile. But the warning bell rang, and it had to end. He stood only slowly. The pain was coming back, and with it came the familiar sense of dread. Just a few more, and that'll be all, he told himself, and went to the checkout counter. 2-week delivery, the old librarian said from behind her horn-rimmed glasses, her silver hair done up in a bun. She was the stereotype of a librarian come to life. He nodded, threw the books into his black backpack, zipped it up, and left. A few more shoves from one class to the next, and some punches to his slender biceps, which were anything but friendly, but against which Albert could not protest, and his other arm ached too. The last bell rang with science class, a few dozen people. The one virtue of it was that there were more seats than people, allowing Albert to isolate himself out of reach. One more ordeal, then I'm home again and free for the weekend, he told himself, counting the minutes and the seconds of his life away until the bell rang to allow him to leave. The familiar game of shadow jumping began after him, but Albert had other things on his mind. So much so that he didn't notice the shouts, "Your daddy's dead," for a while. Nor did he notice that his indifference had an effect. I wonder if they'll like... Albert's thought was interrupted when he felt himself being yanked backward. His entire body spun so hard that one leg in mid-step came up and toppled him off center. There was only a split second before the fist connected with his face right at the eye, and he fell hard on the concrete. He hit his elbow and yowled out at the sudden pain that lanced through him like a blade on fire. Ah! He rolled on his back. The pack there caught most of it, but that just meant more force on the back of his head, and for a moment everything was blurry. Shit! Go! Let's go! He heard the one who struck the blow shout out and take off running. Don't tell anybody or you know what will happen. It was one last admonition, and as he rolled over on his side, spitting blood from where he'd bitten his tongue, Albert shook his head. He got up to all fours and slowly began to stand before people poked their heads out of windows in response to his scream of pain. He held his stomach and then his elbow and shouted with a shaky wave of his arm for them not to bother. I fell down, that's all, he said, and gave a weak smile, then forced himself to straighten up and walk as if he were fine. Idiots, I don't know what will happen. All I can do is imagine that it would be worse, he thought, and hobbled up to his door when he couldn't fake it any more. Chapter 8. Albert opened the door and disguised the pain in his voice as best he could. "Mom, I'm home!" No answer came, and he frowned. Right. Long shift. She'll be asleep for hours. He reminded himself with a whisper, then walked as quietly as possible over to her door, cracked it just a bit, and peeked in. Sound asleep and quiet. He closed the door with the knob turned far to the left so that even the catch didn't make a noise, and turned the handle with a very slow motion to the right so that the door was securely closed without a sound. His own room was very quiet. The very slight noise of the game system at work told him that Raziel and Liala were still in there. The telltale noise of a magic casting character's lightning attack would have been like white noise to someone else. But to Albert, who logged at least 1,000 hours or more on the game, it stood out like a sore thumb. He almost opened the door, then he paused. What if they're changing? Then, pain or not, he thought again, wait, what if they're changing? He couldn't keep the pervy smile from his face. Pain or no pain, he was still a young man, and human or not, they appeared to him to be radiant beyond measure. He closed his eyes. Don't be a jackass, he reproved himself, and lightly rapped on the door with one knuckle. It's me, he whispered. He didn't hear any opposition to his entering, and so he turned the knob and opened the door. His right eye was starting to get blurry by then. I guess it's starting to shut. It was an abstract sort of thought, like he was observing rather than enduring. But even blurry as vision out of that eye was starting to be, he could see the dismayed faces, demon with her many fangs, angel with her quivering wings, and both covering one another's mouths. Was there a battle out there? Liala asked as she got to her feet. Raziel set the controller down, leaving her character to continue taking hits from a foe Albert couldn't quite make out. "Did you slay your enemies or just escape them?" she asked, and approached Albert while he closed the door. He brushed past them both, walking in between and throwing the backpack on his bed before flopping down in the chair at his desk. He ignored their questions and went for the zipper. Yanking it open, he began pulling out the library books. "Here," Albert said, and handed the stack over to Liala. "Something for both of you. I've got homework to do right now. Just keep it down, okay? I need quiet, he said twice, softer each time. He winced at the pain in his arms and hissed as he drew the books out. His eyes were squeezed shut to hide the tears of pain. He could feel them looking at him from behind, but had no desire to talk. "Albert, can I—" Liala began, a tiny tentative voice barely louder than a whisper. "Leave me alone! I've got work to do!" He snapped and flipped a book open with a satisfying crack of its spine, opened up a blank document on his computer, and began to get to work immediately. His fingers created a constant clatter on the keyboard, but it wasn't without pain. I must have landed harder than I thought, or they hit harder than usual. Albert wasn't sure, but his elbows, forearms, and biceps screamed at him while he worked. "At least it's easy," he told himself as he pounded out an essay from memory. "Albert!" Liala tried to get his attention again. She had a tiny little voice, delicate, really. "I don't want to talk. Let me work." He dismissed her perfunctorily. A part of him didn't like that, and he could feel the sting his words left behind. "You're not spotted, are you?" Roselia demanded and put a hand on his shoulder. He whirled on her so fast, shooting to his feet when her fingers touched him, that the chair fell tumbling to the floor where it made a dull, heavy thud on the carpet. "Don't touch me!" He hissed with tears in his eyes. She yanked her hand back. That still hurts." He softened his voice when she drew back a pace and held her hand at the wrist as if he'd bitten it. But then he caught her question, and it was so utterly absurd that his anger vanished. "I'm sorry? Did you ask if I was spotted?" "Like covered in spots?" His right eye was shut completely now, and it hurt like hell, and he regretted the sudden motion throwing Raziel's touch away. The pain of that jerking motion was added on to the rest like additional interest on a loan he never wanted to take out. The marks from this morning, injuries of some kind, or am I wrong? Raziel remained a pace from him, and Albert turned away from her to return his attention to the book and his schoolwork. "It doesn't matter," Albert answered. "Nothing can be done about it." "But no, there was no battle. I didn't even fight back." Tears of anger formed so fiercely that he was rendered blind in his left eye, while in his swollen right they burned where they were trapped, unable to escape. The unutterable humiliation made Albert's body shake with impotent rage. He balled up his fists and swallowed his anger and hatred the way he always did. His mother's admonition still rang on. "Just be good. Don't hurt people. Don't fight. Be a good boy." And Albert tried. But it wasn't enough to keep the hate at bay, nor the tears of anger that came with it. "Albert, let me help," Liala asked, more gently than any human ever could, and her small voice so sincere it was impossible to take it poorly. "How can either of you do anything? You don't know anything about this world. You barely know anything about me." He didn't turn around to face her. He cleared his throat. "Just let me do my work. I need to get it all done tonight. I'll explain more to you after my mother's shift is supposed to begin. Sorry I snapped at you. I don't want to talk about it. Let her, Albert. Trust us." Raziel gave a fangy smile that was anything but trusty-looking. Her hand came out, hesitated to touch him, and then she brought it back to hold one of her hands in the other. "I don't have access to world magic, but I still have access to body magic, the internal magic, remember? So I can at least do this much." Liala's smile came and went with nervous energy, and then her hand went up as Albert turned to the side in his chair. He wiped his left eye clean. "Fine, whatever. If it will get you off my back, go ahead and do it," Albert quipped, eager to just get it over with. Liala's open pale palm developed a bright, otherworldly glow. It was merely a pinpoint at first, but it grew and grew and grew, becoming the size of the head of a pin, then a baseball, and finally the size of a human head. She was gritting her teeth and growling like an angry puppy as she put in the effort, and the ball of magic redoubled in size and began to wash over Albert himself. The steady glow grew and hummed like a fresh new hard drive, and his entire body was coated so that he was blind as if he were in a fog of the purest white. While it might have been the color of the hottest flames, Albert immediately thought of it like being wrapped up in a warm blanket in front of a warm fire on Christmas Eve. "This is wonderful," he whispered in reverence. The swollen eye began to heal, the scrapes fading, the bruises returned to normal flesh. Inch by inch he was bathed in the healing angelic light until no ache or pain of the body troubled him in the slightest. So that is an angel. So then, what does a demon do? He wondered, and then focused instead on the healing process itself, as the light gradually began to recede like floodwaters returning back to their point of origin. Liala lowered her hand with a smile and then asked with a proud little smile, hands on hips and all, when she leaned forward a little, "How did I do, Albert?" Albert moved his arms around. He touched his back, his sides, the back of his head. The side of his head, all pain and all injuries, were completely gone. Yes, I'm much better, thank you," Albert said, and bowed his head in hushed reverence while she preened, and he tried desperately to think of something else to add. Chapter 9. The welcome relief Albert felt at being healed entirely of his physical wounds was matched by a considerable amount of curiosity regarding his already curious and unexpected guests. "How I even managed to think of homework or school is going to be a mystery I will never solve," he thought, and took a deep breath. "I'm sorry I snapped at you both. You were trying to help, and I was rude to you." He made his apology and met their eyes. "You've already got enough problems." Raziel and Liala relaxed the evident tension, and their wings folded in around themselves, ceasing to tremble behind their backs. "It's fine," Raziel replied with a dismissive wave toward her sister. "She's the one who healed you. I can't use healing magic." She gave him a long, steady look. "But you probably figured that." Liala wrung her hands. No, it's fine. It's what that kind of magic is for. My sister would have if she could—" She briefly dropped off the sentence and had a hard time meeting his eyes. "I see what you were trying to protect us from. I'm sorry we didn't believe you when you said it was dangerous." Albert's jaw tensed. "It would be worse for you. They do that to me despite my being a human like them. What would happen to you is probably worse." Raziel picked up one of the books he'd brought for her, and, evidently more to fidget than anything else as she wasn't looking through the pages, she asked him flatly, "Why? Why did they do that to you? What did they do anyway?" Albert never explained it to his mother. He never admitted it to teachers or authority figures. But confronted by living myths who had no one else to tell and nowhere else to go, he turned away from them and slumped forward. "I exist." "So?" Liala asked. He caught the reflection of her face. Her bright blue eyes seemed more knowledgeable than he wanted to admit, but the baffled way she asked revealed how utterly alien she really was to his world. "I'm just an ordinary person, but humans?" Albert scratched his head. "Look on your world. Maybe parents can give birth to both angel and demon children. Maybe orcs and goblins and whatever else lives there can get along with what's different. But that isn't always the case here. Remember what I told you about other intelligent species?" The pair gave little nods in unison, but clearly didn't appreciate the implications. "A human would have gotten that, and that doesn't say much for us." He thought and gave out an exasperated sigh. "We have a whole planet to ourselves because what we couldn't kill for food, we killed off as competition for food. We don't treat differences very well, even between each other." "But you're not different, are you?" Liala asked, and looked him up and down, unsure of what she should even be looking for. "Sure I am. My father's dead. My mother is barely here more than to sleep. Of course, I'm my father's son, and given who he was, that's bad enough. So I'm more or less without a normal family or life compared to the rest of them. More than that, I like different things than the popular people do, so I get targeted." Albert said it as rationally as he could, openly stating what he'd long understood to be true. However, regardless of how well he understood it, saying it out loud made it so much worse, and his eyes filled with tears of frustration. The hand on his desk clenched into a fist so tight that it shook and his jaw clenched with rage. "So, they're allowed to hurt you whenever they want. That doesn't seem fair." Raziel pursed her lips, but both she and her sister blinked in surprise when Albert let out a long and bitter laugh. "Right! They can do whatever they want, and I can't do anything about it because the ones who should stop it don't give a damn. That bitch. That bitch. And not just her, everybody knows. And they either watch and do nothing or take part in it themselves. Yeah, there's rules. The teachers, if you want to call them that, don't teach the lessons they think they do. They're not supposed to allow it, but they ignore it because it's easier. Or they ask if I need help knowing I'll say no because it's humiliating. Even if I did say something and they did something, I'd just get it worse later. So, why not hit back? Aren't you allowed to even do that? Raziel asked. Albert's bitter laugh and bitter words faded away. He couldn't look at either of them. Yes, but also no. I was always taught not to use violence, not to be violent. Don't hurt people, don't get into fights, don't get into trouble. Just be a good boy and... Albert sucked in a breath. It's complicated, but even if I did that, what's the point? I'll just get jumped by several of them later. So nothing can be done. If my father were alive and not who he was, maybe he could have done something. But I can't tell my mom as it is. She works too hard. I can't burden her with this. He shrugged. All I can do is put up with it until I can leave. Then never see them or this shit town ever again. He fiercely wiped his eyes to get rid of that shameful display and put his back to them again. Humans are complicated, Leala said, and taking up a book from off of the bed, she looked down at it. A concise history of everything. She said the title aloud, and that prompted another thought from Albert. So you can read it? I admit I was curious when you spoke my language, but you can read it too? Albert asked. Though he didn't feel like turning back to face her, it did bear asking about. Sort of, Leala answered. Her melodic voice was such that he could practically hear a little smile on her face even if he couldn't see it. We summon heroes to our world, but they would come over not knowing how to talk to us. So the ones responsible for the ritual have a spell that imbues us with a translation skill. I didn't actually know it worked on written words until just now, but I'm still thinking in my language, but I'm speaking in yours. You didn't notice while I was playing those games? Raziel asked. I wasn't paying attention to you. I was... She began to tap one finger against the other, looking a little sheepish. You know, with the little well in there that keeps refilling... The toilet! Wait, that's... Well, it was interesting. Endless water. Leala defended herself, but her blush was blatantly obvious. Great. The water bill is going to be high this month. Albert rolled his eyes, and as if to distract him from it, Leala jumped back to the subject. Huh, neat. Albert had to admit, and decided to let the toilet issue go. But true to the nature of questions and answers, her answer only led to more questions. He thought about what to ask next and settled on something. Can you actually speak your language if you want to? I'd like to hear it. Both of ours or just mine? Leala asked. I thought you two were sisters. Albert glanced over at Raziel, who rolled her eyes. I look nothing like her. She pointed her red finger sharply toward the one she called sister. We're siblings by how we grew up, not by birth. Oh, right, so you were adopted, Albert concluded. Again, no. We grew up in I don't know how to explain this. A school for ritual candidates. Raziel explained, and her red eyes no longer rolled, but she approached and put a hand on his shoulder. I suppose we owe you answers, but this isn't comfortable to talk about, so do I have to answer more on this? Are you going to make us leave if we don't talk? That was what Albert heard in Raziel's question. He closed his eyes. Don't be cruel. They're alone. They've got nobody, and they're nice. No, I'm sorry. I would like to hear what your languages sound like, though, if you don't mind. Albert gave a warm smile up at the fangy demon woman, and she straightened up a bit, heartened. Meanwhile, he tried very hard and failed, not to notice the way her breasts bounced just a little when she did so with such a crisp motion. I'm a pervert, he thought with resignation, but kept the smile on his face to listen. Leala folded her hands together in front of her waist, spread her white feather wings, and bent humbly forward. Mao eria sen shalau falenshi salo fashila, Albert Baptiste Lamarck. It was melodic, harmonious, and beautiful, musical the way she spoke, and Albert was transfixed. So that's your language. It's beautiful. Does it have a name? We call it cloud tongue, as you would say it, Leala said, and brushed a lock of golden hair away from her face and back over her ear. Yeah, it's pretty nice, but it's all soft. Raziel waved a dismissive hand and spread her wings as wide as she could, her hands on her hips, her red eyes flashed like a ruby catching the light of the sun, and she spoke her mother tongue. Exox, meveski, mit wuskit pluke zinksi tiktkil, Albert Baptiste Lamarck, where Liala's had been melodic as a mother's rocking lullaby. The savage, guttural language of the demon might as well have been a death metal concert. So, that had almost no vowels. I doubt I could ever say anything like that. But it was something else, Albert said after flailing for something nice to say. Raziel took it for a compliment. Thank you. We don't use vowels much except either in a name or in reference to something very specific. Angels use them like they're going to rot if they don't. Storm tongue is much stronger, Raziel smirked. But Liala piped up, holding her hands up into fists. She glared at her sister earnestly and bounced her heels while she exclaimed, "We just like pretty sounds. What's wrong with that?" Albert held back any noise of his own while he watched the angel bicker with the demon. If he ever doubted they were siblings, he didn't anymore. It was only his stomach growling that stopped them from arguing. "You're hungry." Actually, so am I," Liala said and put a hand on her stomach. "If it's okay, can we eat too?" Raziel seemed the more conflicted. Asking for things didn't seem to come naturally for her. She unconsciously put a hand on her own stomach as well. But before he could say yes, she said, "I'm happy to do some chores or something. Unlike my sister, I am not a freeloader." "I'll work too," Liala piped up, and Albert got out of his chair. It's fine. I can feed you both without shopping today, and I'll show you some things you can do to help out. I just have to make sure my mother isn't here. I don't want her asking why I'm making 3 meals, Albert said placatingly and went to the door. His hand was on the brass knob when he turned back and asked, "Just out of curiosity, when you were speaking your languages, what were you saying?" "My sister was saying some very lewd things. She's a shameless pervert," Raziel said, and crossed her arms in front of her chest. She whistled casually and looked away while Liala turned as red in the face as the demon herself and exclaimed, "I was not." "Wait, was she?" Albert asked with his head cocked sideways a little, and Liala turned on him with her wings fluttering hard enough that they almost lifted her from the ground. "No!" "Raziel, tell him," Liala pleaded. "Fine, she wasn't." Raziel shook her head and went over beside her sister. "She's a bit of a prude if you want the truth." "I am not," Liala squeaked out. "Just because I'm not a succubus doesn't mean I'm a prude." "Whatever you have to tell yourself, virgin." Raziel looked down at her sister just a little with a cocky smirk that exposed her sharp teeth again. Liala took a deep breath to shout something back, her hand raised and finger ready to point. She stopped, they both did, when Albert cleared his throat and coughed into his hand. "Oh, what we were saying was," Liala said and faced him again, bowing with hands in front of her waist and waiting in silence until Raziel rolled her eyes again and imitated her. They then said in unison, "Thank you very much for helping us, Albert Baptiste Lamarck." "You're welcome." Albert flushed red in the face and left the room, closing the door behind him. "How long has it been since I heard the sound of a thank you? And to think I'd hear it that way. And hey, did Liala imply that Raziel is a succubus? That's—" He kept his eyes tight shut, and after calling out for his mother and hearing nothing, confirming she was gone, he stood outside his door again for several minutes with his hand on the knob. "Do not go into the bedroom where a succubus is waiting with her sister with a full-blown harden. We've had enough misunderstandings already," Albert told himself, taking several minutes longer than was comfortable before he dared re-enter again to give them the all-clear. Chapter 10. He opened the door and then stepped back, unwilling to enter the bedroom lest he remember he was living with a succubus and an angel. "Come on, I'll show you how to do some things around here," Albert said and opened a small closet. "This is a vacuum cleaner," he said. "Looks like a weird weapon," Raziel said with a queer look at it. "What does it do? I mean, if there's nothing there, what's there to clean?" Albert did a double take at that, raising one finger and opening his mouth. She seemed so serious, he folded the finger back into his hand and let that drop to his side. "Never mind, I'll show you." He plugged the vacuum cleaner into an outlet a few inches above the floor, then wheeled the appliance out to the carpeted living area and flicked it on. It roared to life with a sucking, whirling, nightmare-like noise of the sort that sent dogs and cats running for cover and evidently set demons and angels alike to flight. Their wings sprang out and they leaped up and away, bonking their heads into the ceiling and then dropping down to low crouches. Raziel had a leg back and knee bent, one taloned hand up and bent above, one open with talons facing the machine, and her mouth open to bare all her sharpened teeth. Albert caught sight of the way Liala moved after striking her head. She flipped backward, assisted by her wings, and landed squared off against it with one hand on the floor and one fist cocked back. He froze and turned it off. Every fiber of his being screamed danger. Their eyes were hard as the stones he was reminded of when looking at them, and they did not move an inch after the noise stopped. "Okay, calm down. Everybody calm down," he said in a slow and gentle way, taking his hands off of the appliance. "Are your heads all right?" he asked with a quiet, friendly smile at them both. His easy manner and concern for their well-being saw them calm almost instantly. "What monstrous thing is that?" Raziel asked. "Is it dead? Did you slay it?" "It's not alive, it's just a machine. It sucks dirt and stuff off of carpet to help keep the place clean," Albert said while trying not to laugh at their overreactions. "It's just a noise," he explained. "It hurts," Liala said with a shake of her head. "A lot," Raziel agreed and glared down at the upright machine. He then went to the kitchenette, and they followed behind them with darted glances back to the storage area where the machine stood waiting. "Ah, other things then. I'll show you how to use an oven and make some simple foods, after I show you how to use the internet. If you want to try to pull down recipes and experiment, you'll have the time for it. I can afford to waste a few ingredients for you to learn, and I guess it would be nice to have a meal made. Mom doesn't have time anymore. Her job as a nurse is too demanding." Albert blinked back tears and was grateful he wasn't facing them directly while standing in front of the oven. "So, first you do this." He then proceeded to show them how the coils conducted heat to warm up and cook food in pots and pans, and how to use the oven beneath the stove, explaining how it controlled the temperature, how to set the timer, and other basic things. Liala's eyes lit up when she looked at the shiny black appliance, and she nodded along sagely while he went through what to put in it, such as metal, and what not to, such as plastic. Her wings fluttered with childlike excitement, and she peppered him with questions. But the most ominous of them was, "Is it really all right if I accidentally ruin some of the food?" "I'd rather you didn't ruin it, but if we have to throw some away, it happens." Albert shrugged, and the pair responded with unabashed stares. "You are rich," they exclaimed. No, I'm not." Albert shook his head. "If I were, I'd hire somebody to take care of the assholes who make life difficult." "But you're talking about wasting food!" Liala half cried out. "It's annoying, but we can just have more delivered. Oh, and the spice rack is over there. Those are—" He never got to finish that sentence. "Spices?" They yelped and scrambled in a heap toward the double-decker spinning spice holder. Liala got there first and began yanking the little glass bottles up to read the labels. "Cinnamon? Salt? Oregano?" She carefully set the bottles down one by one as she read the names off and locked eyes with her sister, who was busy doing the same. "This can't be real. This can't be," Raziel whispered as she set down a container of crushed mint after inhaling the rich smell and sighing as if the demon was breathing in the air of heaven. "Are spices rare for you back home?" Albert asked, nonplussed by their excitement. Liala began to put them back with the utmost reverence, like she was touching holy relics. "Very! War happens so often that it's hard to keep trade going for very long, so you might have a local spice and learn to work with that, but this variety wouldn't even exist in the homes of the highest nobility. Just what you have here would be worth enough gold to live a moderately comfortable life until you died of old age, if you were careful with it." "Oh, well, we've got good supply chains. So this is cheap here. Experiment with different foods if you want, just don't burn down my apartment," Albert said with a smile, and then glanced at Raziel. "And I'll get you something to fix the hole your horns punched in my ceiling." Raziel reached up and touched the pointed horns, tapping her finger on a tip and coming away with bits of powdery white plaster. "Sorry," she said sincerely. That was all fairly simple, but as an extra precaution, he went through the other things as well. "Never ever drink this stuff," he explained, holding up detergent, liquid bleach, and other bottles one by one, then stopped. "Wait, it might not actually be poisonous to you two, but it's lethal to us, or dangerous at least, but I wouldn't recommend it." The refrigerator and freezer combination had Liala enthralled. She opened and closed the door a dozen times with childlike laughter. "It's like having fall and winter in boxes. This world does have magic." "It's not magic. You can make something like this by hand if you have the right tools." Albert corrected her with a gentle smile and finally firmly closed the door of the refrigerator again, letting his hand linger there so that she wouldn't open it another time. She took the hint and let her hand fall at her side. "I normally handle all the bills so my mom doesn't have to, but if you really want to be able to help me, I can show you how to do that," Albert added as they followed him out of the kitchen area. "You'd trust us with your family treasury? You'd trust a demon with it?" Raziel asked. Albert's face went ashen gray as he looked over his shoulder at her. "If you were going to do to me what happened out there, you'd have already done it. It's easier to trust you because you're not human." He turned his face away from them and his voice perked up again. "Here's how you do laundry. And do not attack the washing machine or the dryer," he said as he took them downstairs to where those units lay. The lights flicked on and they looked around at the arrays of junk and old things around the basement, but Raziel picked up on one thing at least. "Hey, that's a fishing pole, isn't it?" she asked with a cheerful smile and pointed past him to the wall. "Yes, it is," Albert said with a winsome little smile on his face that she couldn't see from behind him. "I knew it! It looks different, but when we lived back home, I used to fish with the old orc who tended the grounds. It's nice for something other than doors to make sense around here." She rushed forward to take the long, black rod off the wall. "Don't touch it!" Albert snapped so sharply that Raziel froze in mid-gesture. He lowered his voice and repeated, "Please, don't touch it. It was my father's." "Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to see what made it different from... I'm sorry." Raziel put her hand down, as well as her gaze, and her wings seemed to droop a little. "It's fine. You didn't do anything. It's just a sensitive subject for me. He used to take me fishing before things happened. I just don't want anyone messing with his things." Albert looked over to her and gave her a forgiving look with the corners of his lips turned up just a bit. "Wash and dry your clothes here, and I guess we'll need to get you something you can wear when what you've got is being cleaned. We'll get that taken care of today," he said while taking them through the motions of washing and drying a load. "That's most of it, other than the bills. I'll show you how to use the TV for more than just video games and introduce you to the internet. I think you'll like that one." Albert chuckled a little, and the remaining tension melted away.